Mr. Michael Brenaman is your class speaker. The Provost Selection Committee chose Mike for this honor from a group of outstanding candidates nominated by our academic programs. Mike Brenaman comes from Bellingham and graduates today with a Bachelor of Arts degree in Human Services. Before college, he served in the Army for 9 years and worked as a service officer for disabled American veterans. In 2009, he began his education at Western after receiving his associate's degree from Whatcom Community College. Mike says it was his instructor, Jan Verner, who first persuaded him he belonged in the Human Services program. At first, Mike wanted to be a one-on-one service counselor for veterans. Instead, he has decided to study policy and to have a greater effect on veterans during his time here at Western. Mike created the Veterans Safe Zone program at Western. The program has since spread to the campuses in Edmonds, Everett, Olympia, and Yakima. He also has helped the local community by interning at the Whatcom Homeless Center and by helping homeless veterans. Please welcome your class speaker, Mike Brenaman. Mike.
Thank you, President Shepard, faculty, staff, honored guests, families, our veterans in the audience, and of course, all of our graduates. Today is the completion of a dream that began 4 years ago when I first talked to Jane Verner. Jane helped me to realize my passion. You see, I was directed to see Jane by one of the counselors at Bellingham Technical College. And after discussing the options there at BTC, I knew I wanted to help veterans. But I didn't know exactly what to study to do that. Jane understood me better than I did myself at that time in my life, and she knew I belonged in a human services program. Jane, thank you. See, today's graduation is the end of a journey, an amazing accomplishment for all of us, wearing a cap and gown. Our next journey starts tomorrow when we wake up and realize that we are in what may seem to be unfamiliar territory, a place that no longer has finals, and a place that no longer has textbooks. We have been there before, but this time it looks much different. We are older, much more mature, and besides an education, we also have the Western Washington University experience that we will carry with us from this day forward. No one can take that away from us. When future employers ask why we are better than the next applicant, we can tell them that we are Vikings, and no other education or experience can match that. To the families, spouses, significant others gathered here today, I want to take a moment to address you specifically. Thank you for sticking by us, and at times holding us up when we felt like we could not go on, like we could not write another paper that didn't sound just like the one we wrote last week. I think I can speak for all of us when I say that without your help and support, we graduates would not all be here today. Thank you. To my fellow graduates, the path that we have walked prior to arriving at Western have all been different. Mine was made up of 9 years in the Army, followed by a number of years in the ag business, and then moving to Bellingham. I fell into another path when I found myself unemployed after being laid off, which I thought at the time was horrific news. To my surprise, being laid off was one of the greatest things, as I was approved for participation in a 4-year higher education program by the Veterans Administration Vocational Rehabilitation and Education Program. I was able to take advantage of this program because I was injured while on active duty in the Army and I'm a disabled veteran. I know that our paths will go in many different directions after we leave. As for me, I'm already planning, as was said earlier, to enter the grad program in the fall of 2012 with the rehabilitation counseling program at the Everett Satellite Campus. So don't consider this as the end of your graduation. Continue to learn something new each day. Encourage others you know to pursue higher education. We all know how to overcome obstacles so we can be an example for other people and an inspiration to others. As you go forward from here, I challenge you to think about veterans who will be coming back from the current wars and reintegrating in our communities, your community. Some of them will have visible wounds, some of them will not. They all need to be welcomed home by outstretched arms and unconditional care from those around them, be it family, friends, or veteran service organizations in the area. Veterans who come back to our communities will also have the opportunity to go to community colleges or universities. Get involved in the veteran community in your city. Volunteer with an organization that's sole purpose is to assist those men and women who have served in your community. Lend an ear to a veteran. You won't regret it. Make a change in your community. As Mark Parent says in his book, Turning Stones, there is no small change. There is only change. I want to conclude this morning by telling you a story about a man who became an inspiration for me. His name is Steve. Steve was a field medic in the Special Forces unit and was sent to Iraq and Afghanistan on multiple deployments. As a field medic, Steve saw the best and the worst of fellow soldiers. And when Steve tended to their wounds while on missions, he worked very hard to ensure that they all came back alive. Steve decided after his 5th deployment he would leave the Army and go to work as a civilian trauma nurse or an EMT. Steve got married to his high school sweetheart and was very happy. About 6 months after Steve was discharged from active duty, he entered a convenience store to pick up a gallon of milk on his way home. Steve did not make it home that afternoon. Instead, Steve found himself in a local hospital, unable to move, barely able to breathe, and realized he had breathing tubes in his throat, tubes in his arms, and his wife was standing over him. You see, after all the time that Steve spent in the Special Forces, he was not prepared to be shot multiple times by a teenager who was robbing that same convenience store that Steve was shopping in. I tell you all this to tell you that Steve has now learned how to talk again, and he has partial use of his arms. The lower part of his body is paralyzed, but he still gets up every day to help others who may be worse off than he is. When Steve was asked why he went through everything that he must do just to get dressed and out of the house, he did not hesitate in saying that when he joined the Army, he signed a contract. That contract had an entry date and an exit date. He knew exactly how long he would be in the military. When he raised his right hand and swore an oath to protect his country and the Constitution of the United States, there was no expiration date tacked onto that. Steve is no longer able to serve his country by wearing a uniform, so he chooses to help those veterans in his community who are coming home. I don't expect any of you to be Steve. I just want you to think about what you can do for those in your community who may need a hand up. Reach out and feel the reward that money can never give you. Once you do, you will be hooked. So go from here today and think about what kind of impact you can have on your community, not what your community can provide to you. Thank you.
Thank you,